Recording.
Recording. I'm gonna do it again, y'all. Just so transparency. This is the second take. We had technological issues, even though we've been doing this for years now. Somehow, it's something always happens. This beautiful background that everyone sees, it fully embodies playfulness and liberation. And the reason this beautiful human is here. Can you tell us who you are, please? Which is such a weird question, by the way. I know that.
My name is Jorge Gutierrez. I think I'm most known for directing a movie called The Book of Life with Guillermo del Toro as my producer. My wife Sandra Kiwa and I from Tijuana, we created a show called El Tigre for Nickelodeon, and then most recently I created an animated show called Maya and the Three, which won 4 Emmys. So I'm super proud of it. Again, people keep telling me like, "Oh, you're an overnight success." It took 25 years. So,
and you're a CalArts alum, right?
Yeah, I am a CalArts alum. I went to experimental animation. Yeah, CalArts Mafia, right, baby? Oh no. All right, Chris, you froze for a second.
We're back.
Yeah, we're back.
Were you pre or post Tim Burton?
I was post Tim Burton. I graduated in 2000, and I remember in the Chenard dorms there was a Tim Burton dorm room that had the crooked door. I'm sure you saw it.
Yeah.
And it was like, we one of my favorite CalArts thing is one night at a Halloween party, I went back to my dorm with my roommate, and our door in our dorm was open, and Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens himself, was in our room.
Oh my gosh.
And he said, "This used to be my room." And he's like, "You guys have no idea the madness of things we did in this room." And we're like, "Oh, good to know."
For those who don't know, those CalArts parties were epic. And I bet when you were there, were even more epic than when I was there. I think they've been watered down every year since. But apparently, word on the street was you were the heyday when it was wild.
Yeah, literally, this is like, mid 90s to late 90s. It was pretty wild. People from all over Hollywood would show up. Literally, everybody would show up to these insane parties. And I remember like waking up in the bushes. I remember waking up and not having a shoe. I was like, what? So it was pretty wild back then.
That's so fun. Okay, I start every one of these with the same question. What is liberation?
What is liberation? Liberation to me is freedom, and it could be internal freedom, right? Because I think a lot of the things stopping us are things we put on ourselves, right? Trying to live up to certain things, or trying to continue certain traditions, which has been a struggle for me my whole career. Sort of this idea of what you're supposed to do as opposed to what you feel that you should do. So for me, liberation is freedom to fail, to succeed, and to come to terms with this idea that the outcome is not as important as the journey.
Amen. Yeah, liberation is freedom. Do you put that freedom into your art, or does doing art, being an artist, make you free? Or I guess, what is the relationship to who's freeing who?
I think for a lot of us artists, I'm sure you included, Chris, if we don't make stuff, I think we go insane. This is our therapy. This is our the way the catharsis of the human experience for us sort of pours out. And I think, my father passed away 1.5 years ago, but one of my favorite things he would always tell me was, Jorge, all the stuff you make, this is the stuff that you would do for free. And the fact that you make a living doing this stuff is, you are very privileged and you're very lucky, because this idea of you get to put out there and express all these things that have, basically boiling up in you, and you get to express them, and you get to communicate with literally millions of people. That is a huge privilege. And this burden that some people call it, of being an artist, it's not a burden to me. It's always been a gift. So I'm very thankful, and I am very aware of how privileged I am.
For Artists listening, myself included, I understand that. Yeah, this is something we would do for free. This is how we fell in love with it, right? Like it moved us and opened our hearts enough to be like, I want to be a part of that. And then when you start making money off of it, and it pays your rent and it changes your quality of life maybe, and you become sort of dependent on it. I think you come into these battles where you forget that you would do it for free because you wouldn't do it for free anymore. You're like, I deserve to be paid for it. And so what is that, I guess, to artists listening, who are probably struggling with that, is there anything you can say to them about that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I remember I just gave a talk a few years ago with an ex-classmate in Canada, and she said, well, obviously we're very friendly and we rib each other about stuff like this. And she goes, so Jorge, how does it feel to be such a successful sellout? Uh,
Savage.
yeah, pretty savage, right? So I was like,
You
hold
did that
on.
in front of people?
Yeah, a full auditorium, right? So everybody laughed and I laughed, and I said, as someone coming up in the '90s, my definition of sellout is when you change your work to become the thing that is popular, right? When as an artist, you bend to the whims of what's popular there. So, for example, if you're a musician and you play a certain type of music, and all of a sudden reggaeton is popular, and then you change your style to be a reggaeton artist, to me, that's selling out. If you play your music and all of a sudden it becomes popular, you're not selling out. Your thing just became popular.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I approach my work, where I got rejected for years and years and years, and eventually the climate and the culture changed enough. And by the way, it's luck because you can't predict any of these things. Uh, and people embraced the things I was making, and then I became successful. So to me, I've never seen it as selling out. I just went, oh my God, I'm so lucky that people now like the stuff that I was doing for my whole career. And this idea that selling out, like an artist who makes money and who is successful, is especially in the '90s. It was such a negative, right? Like, oh, you almost have to be ashamed of success.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at all my heroes in film and cinema and painters, and I went, no, you can't be ashamed of success, especially as an immigrant like me. Like, I'm gonna celebrate my wins because it's been so hard. And people have asked me many times, like, do you ever get imposter syndrome? And I can honestly tell you, Chris, I've never felt imposter syndrome because I have to work so hard for every little thing I've ever gotten. So if anything, I go, there's no such thing as stumbling your way into success. Like basically everybody I know who's done well got lucky, but worked their ass off. Like those two things are to me the and you get lucky, of course, by being prepared.
Hmm. Yeah, tell me more about that, because I do say that all the time. Like, I have no doubt that I've worked my ass off. Uh, but there is an element of luck, right?
Of
Like in
course.
this life, there is an element of luck. Um, what is that? Is it as simple as that? Is it preparation? Is it just right place, right time? Is it just keep your head down, chop wood, carry water?
It was interesting. So my father was an architect, and he worked his ass off. He worked really hard, and he struggled a lot. And when I was a kid, he would sit me down and go, "Here's where I think I'm failing." Right? Like I had a dad who basically taught me. He was like a kung fu master, and he went, "Here's where I'm failing." He's like, "I'm really good at my job, and I'm really really creative, and I'm really good at being an architect. But Jorge, I'm terrible at selling myself. And I'm terrible at going to events and going to parties and literally networking with, people who can afford to hire an architect. Like I'm terrible at all those things. When I deal with very rich clients who want their houses, I'm basically dealing with the wife or I'm dealing with the mistress. He's like, those are my real clients. And I'm terrible at negotiating all these things. So he said, as an artist, the lesson you should learn from me is that being a good artist is only 50%.
Hmm.
Being good about promoting yourself, selling yourself, networking, uh, shaking the right hands, being at the right parties, being at the right events, That's 50% of it. And I have friends who are nowhere near as good as I am as an architect, but they're really good at those other things.
Mhm.
And every time I go, wow, they're so lucky they got that job or they got, this commission, I go, they made their luck. They compensated. And I'm a big kung fu movie fan, and one of my favorite sayings in those movies is, a guy goes, a kung fu master hides his weaknesses, but a grandmaster uses his weaknesses. So whatever you're not good at, use that to your advantage. And so I've really tried to apply that idea. So I was terrible at public speaking. Even though it seems like I'm a social person, I'm not really a social person. And I just had to force myself into doing those things. And I remember another giant lesson I got from my, my hero and my mentor. And I feel ridiculous even saying that he's my friend, but Guillermo del Toro taught me this lesson on Book of Life, where he said, when he made The Devil's Backbone, which I think is my favorite Guillermo del Toro movie that no one's seen. It's a very, very
I haven't
obscure
seen it.
movie. Yeah, it's a very obscure movie to most people. And he killed himself on this movie, and it's amazing. And he said, I thought as a director, he almost lost his house, he almost got divorced. Like, this movie took a lot out of him. And he said, but I kept saying, as long as the movie's incredible, and as long as the movie's good, my job as a director is done. And then the movie was done and no one saw it. And he said, so the biggest lesson I got was making something good is only half of the goal. After you make something good, then you need to put just as much effort into selling the thing and into selling yourself to do another thing. And he did that. He said, I did that on Pan's Labyrinth. I put just as much effort
Mm.
into making the movie as I put into promoting the movie and promoting myself. And he won an Oscar, and basically, like, Pan's Labyrinth changed his whole career. But it wouldn't have happened without Devil's Backbone. So that was the giant lesson. This idea that, especially in art school, we're never taught anything about
Ever business or
ever
yeah,
business,
ever.
self-promotion, networking, like all these things that, by the way, exist in every industry. It's not like it's just in the arts. But these are skills that a lot of us don't, not only did we not think about them in college, but don't come natural to us. And so developing those skills really, really makes you lucky, right? So this what I used to call the hustle, but I don't think it's a hustle. It's just being smart about the hustle. Because if you just hustle, you could work yourself to death and nothing happens. You have to be really strategic,
Intentional.
right? And I had a teacher who said, "Be Machiavellian for good." Right? And I mean, obviously, like, controversial advice, hot take, right? But be Machiavellian for good, because if you try not to engage in that universe, this idea that you're just going to be doing stuff and someone's going to come and find you, that doesn't exist.
Hmm.
So you have to put
Yeah.
yourself out there.
I think like two things I think about. I'll be honest, networking puts sort of a bad taste in my mouth, but I also understand it. And I was working on a TV show and young actors on the show, and he says, "Do you have any advice?" So I was like, on the spot, and I said, "Be genuinely interested in the people you're working with.
Oh yeah,
Not what can they do for me, but like actually have conversations with them." And I think that can be a version of networking that I can align with spiritually. That's not like,
yeah,
how can you help me, but
right,
how do we serve each other? Like, who are you?
yeah,
Can I
yeah,
actually meet the person? And I think that makes a huge, huge difference. And I love your kung fu wisdom. Um, because I always say everyone boasts about what they know, but no one's, ever telling you what they don't know, and it takes
right,
tremendous courage to share what you don't know, what you're not good at. And those are the people I want to be around.
right,
Um,
right. You
like,
want to be with people who are better than you, right? You want to learn.
yeah. Yeah. Okay, so you wrote this. Your Twitter is incredible for everyone listening. This Twitter is so inspiring and fun and funny, and such a commentary on Hollywood, which is just like an illusion on top of an illusion on top of an illusion. Um,
You know what it
yeah,
is. Yeah,
yeah. So you're like memes, and it's super funny. But you wrote this quote. Will you please read the quote to us?
absolutely. And this is after I decided to leave Netflix, and I decided to take my film out of there. I wrote, after The Book of Life, Maestro Guillermo del Toro told me that my second film would be even harder to happen. Honestly, back then I didn't believe him. 10 years later, I have developed three films: a Kung Fu Space Western called Space Punch, a Lego movie called The Lego Billion Brick Race, and most recently, I Chihuahua, that for various reasons have stalled. And yet, I can't wait to keep trying, to wield the machete of endless optimism and hope is the only way I know how to survive. To fight once more is a gift. So that was my
Yes.
tweet.
So
And even
beautiful.
Guillermo wrote me after I posted that.
He did. What did he say?
He was like, Gordo, are you okay?
Yeah, I get that. Like you're like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Yeah,
good.
good. Yeah, this is like you got shot and you're like driving the car to the border. Tweet.
um, I get it. I know that we need to hype ourselves up, but this hyped me up. Like I do feel like, you said it's not a burden, and you're right. Being an artist is not a burden when you truly are an artist. It is a gift, but it is hard. And I never sugarcoat that. Like when I go speak to young people, I tell them it's like, it is not easy, at every level, because once you do your first movie, right, you want to do your second.
Right.
And once you get your first series regular, you want to get your second.
Right.
And once you get this, you want to get this. And you have these stories about like the path will just unfold. Somehow it doesn't seem to just unfold in that way.
Well,
Um,
and not only does it not unfold that way, but when you're in it and you're like, oh, I've proven myself. On the
yeah.
next thing, I don't have to prove myself. And that is the biggest misconception, I think. You will forever and ever have to prove yourself. Right? That's one of the hardest pills to swallow for me was no matter what I've made, people go, yeah, but can you do this? And so you have to show them.
I think it's what I loved about this quote was the alignment of wielding the machete of endless optimism. Like to fight is a gift, right? Just to act itself is the liberation. The act itself is why I do the thing,
Right.
not for the result or the product. Like I like, this I'm sort of butchering that Rick Rubin quote, but consumption should only be thought about after you've made love to the thing itself.
Right. It's a beautiful sentiment. And
Yeah.
it really is that mindset that if you can master this, if you can hack your brain and hack your soul, because it's such a profound idea, but if you can put more merit in the process than in the result, then you will be always, always, always good. Because if you put the merit on the result more than likely will not be up to you. It'll be up to, the fate of the Hollywood wins and the studios getting merged and the regime changing and the showrunner saying something stupid or was a creep and they canceled the thing. Like there's too many other things that you have zero control over. And so if you put the merit on the result, you're kind of doomed. If you put the merit on the work and you put the merit on the experience and you put the merit on who you were when you started and who you were at the end, then you will eternally be good in that you got paid. That's how I see it. I got paid to get better. I got paid to learn. I got paid to meet people. I got paid to experience something. And I got better. So thank you for paying me to get better. My dad used to say to me, he was like, we're all born Pumas. This is where El Tigre came from. He goes, we're all born Pumas. Jorge. When you were born, you were a Puma. And every experience you had, positive and negative, is a stripe. And you become a tiger the more stripes you get. by the time you die, he's like, by the time you're my age and you're old, I don't want to see a tiger. I want to see a panther because you've experienced all of it.
Hmm.
So grow from good, grow from the bad, grow from all of them.
I your dad obviously, like, first time we met, we were at, yeah, your stories about your father are just like this wise, brilliant Buddha mind. Yeah, how much of your father is in your work, or is it all your father, or um is you gonna come out with a book about your dad, or yeah, what's
Well, my dad is pretty much immortalized in all my work, right? I have always a parental figure in there. And my grandfather was, from my mom's side, also a humongous influence on me. And these were guys, for example, my grandfather, one of 11 kids, grew up first, I love this story. First pair of shoes, he was 9, and they were hand-me-downs. Uh, Grew up in Puebla, and then went on to become a very, very, very successful general in the Mexican army. So he worked his way up from nothing. And he would always tell me, like, doesn't matter where you get to. What matters is where you started from. Right. So that was his whole thing. So getting this old school wisdom, and then getting my dad's more sort of 1960s, more philosophical wisdom, right? Because old school Mexico is very sexist, homophobic. There's a lot of terrible, terrible things. The machismo is very toxic. I feel like 60s mindset got a little more open-minded about a lot of things, a little more progressive. And then obviously you take all these things, right, as a kid, and you try to form your identity as a Latino male. And so they were heavy. They were heavy things to carry. I got taught really harsh things as a kid that I think toughened me up in a way that was really positive, but also kind of shook the childhood out of me pretty early on. But I think that, again, as an artist, this idea that you have to be a poet with your heart, but then you have to be a freaking boxer
hmm.
with everything else, right? This dichotomy of being tough and sensitive is so difficult, right? Like, because you have to be willing to open those wounds at all times to
But
make,
also knowing that your heart can box.
right,
Like
right,
the
right,
body
right,
don't the body can be soft and the heart can be strong. And then the
right.
heart can be soft and the body can be soft. Like,
And you got to be careful, right? Because if your boxing is not there, you emotionally you can get destroyed and wrecked. And if your boxing is too good, nothing can get through, right?
Gloria,
Yeah,
like
yeah. Like she's a great
Gloria,
example of somebody who can balance.
she said to me, she said, when I was young, people said you have soft skin. Don't worry, it will toughen up. Your skin will toughen up. And she's like, it never seemed to toughen up. Like it always hurt. Like the nose hurt, the rejections hurt. It just always kind of hurt. I was waiting for the toughness to happen, and then I realized that actually my soft skin is the superpower.
Yeah.
Like that's why I make what I make, and that's why it works. We don't have to toughen up. We have to embrace who we are, like, and we have to know that that's our superpower, right? Or it's what you said, like, put on blast, your weaknesses, like,
Yeah.
work from that place and know that they're not weaknesses. They're the strong heart and spirit.
And if you can get hurt, Gloria is a perfect example. If you can get hurt and keep going, you're bulletproof, right?
Mm,
You're unstoppable.
yeah. If you can get hurt and keep going, you are bulletproof and unstoppable. Yeah, we're all like action stars.
Yeah. I mean, we're all living our own movies. And I always say, like, you want your movie to have a happy ending, and you want your biopic to have those dark moments so that the good moments matter, but you get to direct it, right? You're directing the movie of your life.
I th- I think, and you can tell me the truth, but I have a feeling that you enjoy your life, and I guess one of my things when I think about liberation or being an artist or having high goals or striving for something, like even striving for liberation, it's like you can forget to enjoy this moment because you're waiting for when you're more enlightened. Uh, the self-help industry wouldn't be $1 billion business, like,
Right.
if we weren't constantly trying to get somewhere, if we realized, like, It's here. Like, you don't need to read the book, just be here. Um, so what is your relationship? And I think artists really struggle from this. Like, I'll be happy when this happens, or it's the next movie, or it's the next Emmy. But maybe you have mastered that, or haven't you? Or what's your relationship to presence versus what's next, what's next, what's next?
Uh, so my wife and I talk about this all the time. So you know how people, their default, for most people, their default is not happy and not sad. It's some sort of living in between default. For some reason, I was born with default being happy and optimistic.
Hmm.
And so again, I'm very lucky that I always assume it's going to work out. I always assume things will get better, even in the darkest of moments. I always go, well, this too shall pass. And what a great story we're going to tell. Oh, you killed my pilot? Man, we put so much work into it, but I got to work with so many amazing people. You spend millions of dollars on this thing that I get to show to everybody for my next thing. Thank you. Like every time people kill my stuff and I tell them like thank you so much, they're like, "Are you gonna kill us now?" Like they don't know how to react to that. And I'm the least vindictive person. And I learned this really early on. This idea that when something tragic or something negative happens, it happens to every single one of us at every level. But how you react to this adversity defines you. That really is the difference, right? How the thing affects you. So I'll give you examples. When my son was diagnosed with autism, he was 2.5 years old. I was in the middle of Book of Life, and at that time, it seemed like my son had died. Right? It was this very shocking news, very shocking idea. We knew nothing about autism, and I remember going, "What do I do? Like I'm in the middle of my hardest job that I've ever done. This movie could ruin my life if I don't do a good job. They could fire me. A million things could happen. We were living in Texas. We didn't know anybody. And I said, no, I'm going to use this to fuel me even more. I'm going to fuel this to make the movie even better. I'm going to fuel this to do something that I remember looking back and I go, when my son was diagnosed, I turned this into fuel. And I remember my dad, before we had the baby, I sat down with him in Tijuana, and he said, "All right, Jorge, you're going to be a dad. Um, what are you going to do now?" I said, "Well, Dad, I'm going to take care of a little baby. I'm going to take care of a little kid. I'm going to be more conservative. I'm going to take less risks. There's a third person coming that I have to take care of. I'm going to be take safer jobs. I'm going to take safer opportunities. Maybe not the most exciting ones. And it's time to not take risks. There's too much at stake." And he looked at me with this like disdain, and he said, "Huh? So I guess I raised a coward."
Savage.
Right? Like machete to the chest. And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Jorge, any success you've ever had, any success I've ever had, any success your grandpa's ever had, was because we took risks. You're gonna have a baby? Yeah. Time to take even more risks. There's even more at stake now. Like, this is not something that you should, like, having a kid, having a family, if you're not careful, you're going to blame them if things don't go well. Don't do that. Don't put that on them. And don't put that on you. And what kind of example will you be to your kid?
Hmm.
So these are the kung fu moments that I'm like, yeah, Dad, you're right. And then I just went for it. And I'll give you another example. My first day as a intern in the animation industry, I I was working at Sony Pictures on Stuart Little, the movie with the CG mouse, and it was my first day as an intern, and so I got there 2 hours early because I was living in Culver City. I mean, I was living in Valencia and Santa Clarita, and this place was in Culver City. And dailies were at 8 o'clock in the morning. I got there at 6. I was so excited.
Wow.
And I'm like super spiffy and wearing a white guayabera, right? Like I'm like, this is it, my first day in Hollywood. and I go to the cafeteria to get a cup of coffee because I couldn't even afford a breakfast, right? I was like, I can only afford a cup of coffee. So, and I still remember it's $2, and I was like, God damn, this is expensive coffee. So I go get my cup of coffee, and I get it in line, and it's my turn, and I get my coffee, and the coffee guy, the cook, goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Janitorial services should have been here an hour ago."
Whoa.
Right. So it was one of those moments where, and we're with a bunch of people there, and I was stunned. And I remember, time froze, and it was like, I can get angry at this guy and tell him off. And by the way, he was Latino, uh, or he has never seen an animator that looks like us.
Hmm.
Everybody he's seen that looks like us is either in janitorial services or the cooking staff or the parking guys. All right, it's not his fault. I'm gonna teach him that people like us can do this job, and I'm gonna become friends with him, and I'm gonna get free breakfast from him. And that's exactly what happened, right? So again, a mini microaggression adversity. What do you do with it? You can turn it into a positive.
Alchemy. I mean, like everything you're
Yeah.
describing is alchemy, right? The ability to
Yep.
turn coal into gold. Like,
Yeah.
and what is how do we alchemize our life? How do we alchemize our struggles, our resistance, um, our adversities? How do we alchemize them into optimism? How do you alchemize? I guess for artists listening, what's your process? How do you alchemize the worlds you build? Like, all these characters and things behind you. How do they just pop into your mind? Do you have a process? Do you wake up every day and 9 to 5 it? Do you like for me, I believe in percolating. Like I'm making a good cup of coffee. I just kind of I set the intention to have, the when to get the coffee right. And so I just put all the ingredients in, I turn on the stove, get the water boiling, and when it boils, I sit down to do the work. But I know writers who sit down and it's like, okay, clocking into the office, like gonna make
Right.
something. So what is your process?
So I've had to basically force myself into becoming a 40-hour a week artist. 40 hours is the union minimum in the animation guild. And so if you're, it's like the mafia. If you're not inspired, and if you're late or something happened to you, they're like, F you, where's my thing? They don't care. Hey, I did, my dog got sick and I went to, they're like, great, where's my thing? Like they don't care, right? So I had to force myself into becoming very, very, very smart about time. Uh, Once you have a kid, you have to get even more smart about your time. And so I forced myself. I was never a morning person. I turned myself into a morning person. I was never somebody who, I was very streaky. I would like get going and then I didn't want to stop. And then I learned over the years that's really unhealthy. So I've learned to balance. The big one for me has now become, uh, I love this Picasso quote. It's my favorite Picasso quote. Again, controversial hero of mine. But my quote that I take to heart from him is, "Inspiration exists, but it has to find you working." And so, whether I'm inspired or not, I'm working. I'm always working, and the ideas flow. And if I go, "Oh man, the script is due on Friday. I just don't feel like writing today." No, I'm gonna write, even if it's garbage. At least I have something to fix. And so I do, and I hate writing. That's the one thing I hate, right? Like English is not my first language. It's really hard for me to, have ADHD. I'm autistic, so there's a lot of things that make writing really difficult for me. My problem's always been I have too many ideas, and so narrowing stuff down and focusing is really, really, really difficult. I'm the guy who has a Dodgers game or a Lakers game. Uh, I have music playing and a podcast at the same time while I'm working. Like I'm crazy that way, and it just focuses me. The noise focuses me. So the I can honestly tell you the ideas just keep flowing. Guillermo told me you're like a nuclear reactor of
Mhm.
creativity. But if you're not careful, you can explode. And so that was one of the things, one of the warnings I give students, and I always, up and coming artists and young artists, all your heroes, I would say this, all your heroes work really hard and maybe were really unhealthy in their 20s to sort of do the rise up. You can't tell people to do that. But if you analyze success, most of the artists that did well just worked really hard in their 20s and maybe did some really unhealthy things in their 20s. 30s, your sword is sharpened, your machete sharpened, you're getting really good at wielding it, and you're really smart about the world. And then I feel like in your 40s, I'm 49, in your 40s, that's when your body of work and the things you have done now have built this person of who you are, and this sort of amalgamation of every experience you've had. And now you're at a point where you're wielding and you're only fighting when you choose to fight, right? And then in your 50s, if you're lucky, that's when you're just sitting in the back going, I don't need to fight. Look at all
Mm.
the stuff I've done. So it's a journey, right? And I look at everybody's career, all the people that I admire, and I analyze their career, and no one's career goes like this, right? Everybody's career goes like this. And in the darkest of times, you go, how did they recover? What did they do to get out of the slump? Wow, at the height of their thing, most people stumble, but then they get back
Mhm.
up, right? So you start seeing patterns, and you start seeing people's careers, and you start seeing the climate of the world change. So, for example, in the pre-pandemic, it sure seemed like we were in a golden era of virtue and diversity. I called it, where where people who usually were not represented got shots and got to shoot their shot, and a lot of TV shows, a lot of movies, a lot of projects and streaming were handled by first time minority and you know generally not the majority representation got their shot. Unfortunately for a lot of us, the algorithm, who's a robot, said all these shows by these first timers are dealing with these subject matters or dealing with these cultures. For some insane reason, the algorithm said, well, that didn't do as well as this mainstream show. That didn't do as well as this mainstream movie. Let's not do that anymore. And so those ideas crumbled. Every diversity initiative at pretty much every studio disappeared. All the people who were there to sort of shepherd and help minorities and women to rise up in the field gone. A lot of the executive suites that were very diverse, no longer diverse. The code that we kept hearing was, we just need really seasoned, experienced people to now be in charge. And so, who are the people who are the most seasoned and most experienced?
Old white people.
Old white men, right? Which, again, not to be racist or in any way, these are just the statistics going, well, it's like if it was sports, get me all the super seasoned head coaches who won Super Bowls in the 80s. And you go, well, they're all white guys. I never said white guys. I just said, get me the most experienced people who ran the 80s. So that's where we're at right now. We're
Yeah.
in this, hey, we're not talking race. We're not talking anything about those things. Now it's just about experience. Well, guess what?
And
Experience is the old way.
and how do we get liberated? How do we change that?
I think
Um
the liberation,
how do you become the exec, and how do I become the exec? I always say, like, I don't want to, it's nice to receive fat checks, but nothing changes until we're signing them.
yep,
So
the
how do
liberate.
you do it?
So I'm from the world of animation, and what I'm seeing, at least in my ecosystem, is there's a girl named Vivian Medroso who's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant businesswoman and artist who had a show called Haspin Hotel on Hell of a Boss that she did on her own. She basically kickstarted, crowdsourced, did a bunch of stuff, put it on YouTube. It blew up super raunchy, super like. I'm assuming every studio said no, you can't make this. This is insane. She built her fan base. She built her audience, and now A24 and Bento Box, all these studios basically went to her and they said, "We love what you did. More than anything, we love your audience. Look how many millions of views." And then Amazon came knocking, and they were like, "We want that. We want the thing you made." And now she has an amazing, show being seen worldwide. But this is someone. She's Salvadorian American, someone who made her path on her own and on YouTube and TikTok and basically going, all right, what are the things what we talked about earlier, right? Where are the eyeballs? I'm gonna put my thing that's super honest to me and my super, personal thing where the eyeballs are. And if people like the thing that I'm making on my own and it connects and it blows up, success will follow. And that's what happened to her. So I'm seeing the freedom basically happening on YouTube and self-made artists, self-made tours going, I'm putting my thing, it's just me on this platform. It blows up, and then the studios, TV, streaming, everybody goes, you did this on your own with zero resources. You did this on your own and you built your audience. We want you. And now you control your fate. So I think that's where it's happening.
To me, that goes full circle with so I'm always battling a friend of mine, Zandy Brackett, once said, "Chris, are you an artist if no one sees your art?"
Right.
And I think about this a lot, like if a tree falls in the woods, right? And no one's around, did it make a sound? Like I believe artist is an embodiment. Like I believe it is a space we embody, and you can live in an artistic way. And to me, I think like releasing a show, not knowing how it's going to be received on a public platform for free on your own budget, is are you being an artist is an artist regardless of who sees it?
Right.
To me, it is the Guillermo movie that no one saw,
Right.
that he put his life into, right? And of course, you want people to see it, but are you, as an artist, regardless if no one sees it, and I think that's a beautiful idea to be liberated enough in that way to just say, I'm going to do this. This is my path. I'm going to make this. My sort of final question for you is,
Yeah.
are you liberated?
I am not only am I liberated, but I feel like again, if I'm in the biopic, I hope I'm not in the third act because I feel like I just got started. I feel like the movie just got started. But I feel the weight of time upon me. I'm 49, so I'm feeling like there's so much stuff I want to do, and there's only so much time. And my projects take a long time to make, right? Basically 7 years from El Tigre to Book of Life, 7 years from Book of Life to My and the Three. So my things average 7 years.
That's wild.
Which is pretty crazy, right? So I feel incredibly liberated. I feel like the winds of Hollywood right now, we're in a storm, right? It's I think people are like, oh, we're coming out of it. I think we're still in it. We're still in the storm. There's a lot of adjusting happening, right? What's going to happen to Paramount? Is Sony going to buy Paramount? What's going to happen? Streaming. What is happening? Potential strike about to Yahtzee strike potentially about to happen. Animation Guild strike potentially about to happen. Box office is all over the place. I think these storms make better sailors. So if you can survive all this, if you can thrive in all this, what's the art of war saying? In chaos, there's opportunity. So I have a lot of friends that during the pandemic they leveled up, they powered up, and I have a lot of friends who during the pandemic they didn't power up, and they wasted all that free time. So I think again, it's on us, and so regardless of where you are in your career, regardless of where you are as an artist, remember you still have the most valuable asset that you've ever had. You have you. So how are you going to use you?
Beautiful.
You're the machete.
Oh, yeah. I love the machete references so much. Because yeah, we are these anything in moderation is medicine. Anything too much of anything is poison, so to be
Right.
machetes, right? Machetes can clear a path, can
Hmm.
hurt, can love, can help, can
Yep.
can feed a community. They serve, it all can serve a purpose, whatever tool you are, and too much of it can harm, and just the right amount can heal. Which is how yeah, to me is a very liberating thing. Do you have any questions for me?
Chris, are you liberated?
Oh, it's so beautiful. Like, I've done this with a lot of people now, and you're the only person who said yes. Um,
Wow.
yeah, you should know that. Like, it's a trip. You're the only person who said yes. Which is so profound and beautiful, right? And I think so. Do you know, like, Father Greg Boyle from Homeboy
Yeah,
Industries? So
of
he
course.
just won a huge
Yeah.
award from the president. But I listened to an interview with him once, and he said, every day I pray that God humiliates me. And this blows me away. I mean, like, the courage to really say that, and then it might happen.
Yeah.
Because he says, I get humiliated enough, I'm unstoppable. It's like you said, the stripes.
Yes.
I'm a tiger. I'm the, I'm just life itself. Like,
Right.
so I don't have the courage to say that prayer. I think about it, but man, like, what might come of that, and so I sometimes think I don't have the courage to say I am liberated, but it's as simple as just owning it. It's
Yeah.
just as simple as saying it, and you're the only one who's had the courage to just say it. I
Oh
am
my
liberated.
God. Now I'm feeling very self-aware.
No, no, it's good. It's great. You kidding? Like, this is where we've evolved to. Hopefully everyone else who comes on now is like, yeah, I'm liberated too. I can be that. And so I think in moments I completely am, and in moments I'm not, but I am now sort of meditating on the courage of just saying it. Because
Yeah.
it's not in the self-help book, it's not in my next project, it's not in the next thing I write. It's just in this moment, if the weight of time, and if we don't have, guaranteed next moments, just I am liberated. So I'll say that
Beautiful,
right
man.
now.
That's
Yeah.
good. This reminds me of I got in trouble. I gave a talk at a arts high school, and they were like, "What's the last thing you want to say to these kids?" And I said, "Well, make sure that whatever you do, you make death regret taking you."
Mm.
And I got, the teachers were like, "You can't say this to these kids." And I was like, "What do you mean? This is a really positive idea. Like, the life you live should be so great that when death takes you, because death will take all of us, death goes, man, I really like what you did." And
Mm.
they're like, "That's very Mexican. You can't, like, you're gonna scare these white kids."
That is so great. I love that. I just like the image of, you can animate it, but man, do I like death, and a human just having a last talk, and
Yeah,
death is like, fuck, man.
like you
I
did it
didn't want
right.
to. I didn't want to. I didn't want to take
Yeah,
you, but it's time,
yeah. It's like,
Um,
thanks for the show. That was
yeah.
amazing.
Where death was like, I put it off as long as I could,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I tried, Um, man, yeah, it's a really beautiful image, that you're in collaboration with death, not running from it or
Yeah.
even running towards it. You're just like, you're in collaboration. Um,
Well, I love the saying, Fabio Paz used to say that every Mexican has death in their ear whispering, live, live.
mm,
That's why I like skulls everywhere. It's like just a reminder, this rite's gonna end. Let's make the best of it.
that's Octavio Paz.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Just Mexicans, though. I like
Yeah,
that. He
yeah,
said every Mexican, no one
yeah,
else.
yeah, that to say to other people like, hey, high blood pressure. Take care of that.
Anxiety,
Yeah,
anxiety. Be worried. All right, Mexicans are the chosen ones.
yeah.
So good. Um, Yeah, may death whisper in all our ear live. Amen. Anything else?
Dude, that's it. I left it all in the ring. So
Super grateful for you. This one was amazing. You are you've hit the peak. You're liberated. You know, like you're the one. You neoed us.
I am the Juan.
Yeah, you are the one. That's your next animation. It's like
Yeah, there you go.
the one.
The Mexican Matrix. I
Yeah,
am the Juan.
it's really good. Let me
All right,
turn this
dude.
off.
Thank you. Hugs,
Thank you,
abrazos.
brother. Gracias.
Have a good
Cuídate.
one.
Ciao.